sacrificed their lives in the name of serving their country. It is also the chance to celebrate the perseverance of those who've endured such losses. Each year around this time, real-world and sim drivers alike also congregate to America's home for racing, Charlotte Motor Speedway. As Darrell Waltrip once said, "We may be racing tonight, but we also are racing for them." We hope you're enjoying your Memorial Day weekend as we welcome you to the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina for Round 9 of the Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by Diecast Kings, live on the Global SimRacing Channel. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth tonight is NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver Christian Challenger. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. As these drivers prepare for the 9th race of the campaign, let's take a look at your track guide to find out the best way around Charlotte.
Welcome everybody to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Even though it was built more than 4 decades ago, drivers still love to race at this 1.5-mile quad-shaped oval. Located just a short 13-mile drive from downtown, Charlotte also shares a similar track shape to what you would see at the Texas Motor Speedway and the Atlanta Motor Speedway as well. Despite turns 1 and 2 having the same banking as turns 3 and 4, the two ends of the speedway could not drive any different. Turn 1 and 2 are much more of a sweeping corner, really carrying the speed down into the corner and trying to get that hole shot out of turn 2 down the backstretch. Turns 3 and 4 drive much tighter than 1 and 2, really having to get the car to rotate in the middle of 3 and 4 to make your entry and your exit point. Getting a lap in around here in one piece usually requires some calm nerves and a patient foot. Charlotte was one of the first speedways to install lights around the facility, giving night racing a whole new berth. Charlotte is also known for its place in the perfect day of racing every Memorial Day, acting as the caboose after the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indianapolis 500. If Daytona is the pinnacle of NASCAR racing, then Charlotte has to be just a bumper behind. Fans flock to the largest sports facility in the Southeast and NASCAR's home track. This has been our guide to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Sit back and enjoy the show.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Charlotte Motor Speedway. Once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to bring in my broadcast partner, Christian Challenger, as we talk a little bit more about this racetrack tonight as we get ready to go racing for 80 laps, more than 100+ miles tonight.
Pretty much the definitive 1.5-mile oval here, quad oval, a lot of banking in the turns, 24 degrees, and especially with it being a night race tonight, it's going to be very, very fast. We're already seeing lap times down as low as 28.9, which for the fixed setup is really quite quick.
Blistering quick. That was around the ballpark for drivers on the open iRacing service throughout the week in A-Fix competition. The 24 degrees of banking here at Charlotte should be an entertaining one tonight, with 5 degrees of banking as well on the straightaways. Before we get to your championship standings entering tonight, let's talk about your series sponsors. First things first, Diecast Kings, the title sponsor of the PRL Cup Series. They are your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cars at diecastkings.com. Once again, diecastkings.com. You can also find them on Facebook at Diecast King. This season is also sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products feature incredible immersion and realism for every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Feel what you've been missing by going to thebuttkicker.com. With that, let's take a look at the championship standings to find out what you may have been missing for the 2020 Season 2 campaign entering tonight's action at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Richard Regan Jr. enters tonight with a 25-point lead over Joshua Daniels, Adam Zemke, Bradley Hawley, Pat Harvey round out the top 5. Of note, though, there is a one-drop week in PRL Cup Series competition. Regan Jr. has taken his. Hawley took a second drop week after missing last week at Iowa, putting him behind the 62 points and out of potential contention. With drop weeks factored in, Daniels is 34 points back from Regan Jr., entering the final 2 races of the season 9 points or more gained tonight could potentially clinch the title for Richard Regan Jr. and Ballistic Union. How are the teams, though? For tonight, let's take a look at your team standings entering this evening. With Skidmark Motorsports in a fierce battle for the team title. Quarterback Racing just 8 points behind entering this evening. 24/7 Racing, Rescue Racing, and Pilot Performance Group rounds out your top 5 in the team standings entering Charlotte Motor Speedway. Now, as talked about tonight's race, 80 laps the distance, Christian. What else can you tell us about tonight's details?
Around 9 of 10, and as you said in the championship rundown there, it's obviously a pretty critical weekend heading through to the final next week, and 80 laps tonight or 60 minutes. We've got a little bit of a reduced car count, 18 right now on track, so I think we've got no trouble in reaching the full distance here, which will be a one-stop race, probably around about the 40 to 45 lap mark. Fixed setup, no fast repairs, and a 24 incident limit. I don't think we'll see anybody reaching that 24 incident limit tonight.
And keep in mind, trying to make sure you avoid any incidents too could be determining factors in how the championship plays out heading into Kansas's season finale. Take a look towards the track conditions. Still about 3-4 minutes to go in warm-ups for these competitors tonight. As you see the practice times to the left side of your screen, 81 degrees Fahrenheit is the track temp, 76 degrees the air temp, winds at just 2 miles an hour to the north, humidity at about 58%. In-sim time is about 8:12 p.m. on May the 24th here on Memorial Day. So in our words, fairly cool track conditions for tonight, Christian. That has gone down from the start of practice a couple hours ago, though, as the sun has started to set here at Charlotte.
Yeah, and definitely we see at Charlotte when it runs through into it being a night race, the track does get very, very quick, and it's only going to get cooler as the night goes on, and I think we'll see the lights come on pretty shortly now, and we'll have a true night race. That said, it is a pretty tricky track, actually. It was updated a couple of years ago, and in the past it was a very, very smooth racetrack, and since then it's roughened up quite a bit, especially the 3 and 4 end. It's very, very rough down there, and we can see drivers struggle to stay down by that blue and white line.
And that is so important to stick around because that's the quickest way around the racetrack, and if you're even half a lane higher than that, it can burn up your tires for the long run.
Yeah, it's a very momentum-based track as well, so obviously if you are just a little bit higher, you are having to lift just a little bit more, and as you say, as well as hurting the tires, it really does hurt the lap time because it's all about staying in the gas as much as you can now with these cars, and especially with the times being as fast as they are. If you're lifting just a little bit more than the guy that you're racing, you're really going to lose out, and you lose out quite quickly, actually.
And in a lot of cases, it's actually been seen a little bit in real life for those following along with what's going on in the NASCAR Cup Series tonight, trying to make sure you hold on to grip on apex off. That has been a trouble spot all throughout the week past lap 20.
Yeah, and I think that's when we'll really see the field start to spread out. I think we'll see everybody stay really, really close together until about, say, 15 to 20 laps into a run, and then we'll start seeing cars string out, especially if there's not a yellow. And I think this could be quite a strategic battle. We've seen that it's quite hard to pass cars, especially with the aero push. It has been reduced a little bit since what we've had in the past, but it's still definitely significant, and it does play into drivers being stuck behind cars that are objectively slower than they are.
Right now, about 40 seconds to go until qualifying gets underway. As you can see on the left side of your screen, Jay Feldman is the quickest driver in practice. Richard Regan Jr., Joshua Daniels, Charles Sumner, Scotty Johnson inside the top 5 on the board. Currently, the top 10 separated by only about 1/10 of a second. Everyone's separated by just about 3/10 of a second in hot lap pace, Christian.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. With it being one of these 1.5 mile high downforce tracks, keeps everybody very, very close in terms of the lap times. As you say, only 3/10 separating pretty much everybody in the field. So you won't see cars separate apart until we get to that point where the tires start to matter in the run, and that really is around about 15 to 20 laps in.
Track position could also be very important tonight. We're about to see which drivers can get said track position. Qualify just about to get underway from Charlotte Motor Speedway here in Concord, North Carolina. Once again, 5 minutes to set a qualifying time, 2 solo laps. Fastest times around the circuit have been tending to be on the second lap here at Charlotte by about 1/10 or 2. So in our words, important to make sure you build up as much momentum as you can around the racetrack to get to the checkered flag.
Yeah, absolutely comes down to your preparation in terms of what you do to the tires to get them hot enough to get that second lap really right. But again, it puts a lot of pressure on getting that lap time right. As we said, everybody's very, very close, and if you make a slight mistake, it's probably going to cost you at least half a tenth in either end of the racetrack. And obviously, if you make that mistake in turn 1 and 2, that really carries all the way down the backstretch and into 3 and 4. So it's very, very critical to hit the line correctly.
Absolutely. As we take a look at one of the rescue racing machines, Brenton Shatley immediately jumped on the racetrack. He is one of 2 drivers who in the first 10 seconds took the green flag. He, along with Danny Cervantes, jumped out immediately. About 6 total drivers currently taking laps across the circuit. Now, at this point, again, we have mentioned already the difficulty of sticking around. It's also going to be trying to make sure you play around with that throttle and don't just send it full throttle, or else you're going to potentially clip the apron or bobble up the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a degree of lifting, obviously, throughout the run, and the apron here can bite you pretty hard, as we saw actually there with Chatley on his warm-up lap. He caught the apron in 3 and 4. That's definitely going to have affected his run onto this first timed lap.
Currently on a second timed lap, in fact, a 29.276, despite clipping the apron. That was about a tenth and a half quicker than Danny Cervantes' warm-up lap. We'll see how this second qualifying lap turns out for the Ford Mustang. Coming off the corner very low, coming off of turn number 4. And the time ends up being right around Robert Bisson Jr.'s time at 29.1. That is not the fastest, though. So we talked about the importance tonight, Christian, of making sure you do not make mistakes in this qualifying session. How difficult do you feel it may be for drivers to pass, especially with that aero push you talked about?
I think it's extremely difficult to pass. I actually think this is probably one of the most difficult mile and a halves to pass on that we've seen all season. Obviously, the lower bank tracks seem a little bit less susceptible to this aero push. I feel like because you're lifting earlier at those racetracks, there's a little bit more that you can do. You can differentiate yourself a little bit earlier in the run, whereas these high bank tracks, it's very wide open for quite a while, and it's just so difficult to actually get an angle on a car, because you've got to get underneath them on the entry to the turn, but then you have to be able to maintain momentum to beat them off the corner. And if you can't do that, you can actually get trapped down on the bottom line by a car just holding you on the top side.
And when you're planning for the Coca-Cola 300, your longest race this season, how were you trying to plan and anticipate that as a driver?
Well, that was a little bit different with it being open setup, and really the thing that we were fighting all week was the car being quite tight, especially as the run went on. And I think with the nature of fixed setups, these guys are probably going to be fighting something quite similar, actually, that they're going to find that as the race goes on, the more rubber goes down, the colder it gets, the tighter their cars are going to become, and the more difficult it's actually going to be to build runs. But the advantage that some drivers might be able to find is that if they can just save that right front just a little bit better than the car that they're following, say maybe another 5-10 laps later, they'll find that they're as much as half a tenth to a tenth lap faster. And that's really the key, is to build some kind of offset into the run so that you do have an opportunity, at least at some point, whether that be on short run, whether that be on long run, maybe even a pit strategy decision to either make a short pit stop or a long pit stop.
There's definitely a lot to plan for with a race such as this tonight. You take a look at Tristan Callahan try and make his way around the racetrack. And we've talked a little bit about Callahan and his performance, Christian. He came away with another top 5 at Iowa last week, coming away with a P4 finish. He looked very sporty. Durbin has also looked and shown flashes throughout the season. So a few drivers looking to show what they can do before the end of season number 2 here.
Yeah, we definitely saw with Callahan that in race pace, he's been very, very impressive. It looks like qualifying is really his downfall at this point. Obviously, a 29.1 has moved him up inside the top 10 for now, but he's still a little bit away off the pace. Charles Sumner with that 29.0 for the pole.
And a blistering quick time among some of the drivers who waited for the track to cool down. And it was a massive cool down period. Lane spins off the banking. He recorded 2 of his times. David A. Wilson Jr. in his 3rd start of the season taps the wall with a 29.2 on his first lap. Not enough time to record a 2nd, however. After the track dipped to 79 degrees Fahrenheit during qualifying, we'll see how they'll line up for tonight's race in the PRL Cup Series. Tonight, it's Charles Sumner who will start on the pole, setting a blistering quick time of a 29 flat at 29.013 to set the pole. He'll start alongside the points leader tonight, Richard Regan Jr., who set at 29.033, dead on with Colton Lane, who starts in third. Joshua Daniels will look to keep up and try and pass the 46 tonight. He starts P4, with Adam Zemke and JD Baker starting in row number 3. Row 4, Robert P. Sant Jr. and Pat Harvey. Jay Felton, one of the top drivers in practice, starts in 9th, and Tristan Callahan rounds out your top 10, Christian.
And Brandon Chatley, one of the drivers we saw go earliest in qualifying, he's starting in 11th spot. Alongside him is Stephen Durbin in 12th. Thomas Morris, a driver we've seen with some impressive race pace, is starting back in 13th. Alongside him is David Wilson Jr. And Chad Brown, a driver we see who just tends to start near the back of these races, but has had some impressive runs. He's starting in 15th alongside Scotty Johnson in 16th. We've got Dan McLaren and Danny Cervantes were the last two drivers to set a qualifying time. And then Bradley Holly is listed as being starting in 20th spot, but I don't believe he'll be taking the flag. And then Paul Williams did not set a time. He's going to be starting 9th.
Holly did set some practice times earlier tonight, more than 40 of them, but as mentioned, did not make the start at Iowa last race. He doesn't make it to the grid for tonight. 19 total drivers, all set to take the green flag. Once again, to recap, 24 degrees of banking here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, 5 degrees of banking down the straightaways. This track has been open since 1960, and for more than 60 plus years has held the World 600 and now called Coca-Cola 600 on Memorial Day weekend, and has honored the fallen soldiers from across the United States. Today, these drivers are all set to tackle this mile-and-a-half circuit to try and come away with the checkered flag here tonight. Before we get the green flag tonight here, Christian, your keys to victory.
I think definitely staying out of trouble, running a good strategy and running your own pace, taking care of those tires. And if we do see a long green flag run, it's all going to come down to when you choose to make that pit stop and coming out in clean traffic, clean air, so that you're not in traffic, so that you can have a nice run and really take advantage of those new tires.
Trying to warm up the tires right now at the front of the field is Charles Sumner. He'll be the control car. Once again, to remind you, live timing and scoring is available by going to GSRC.tv. Once again, GSRC.tv. Whole field just about set to take the green flag from Barney the flagman off of turn number 4. Race number 9 of the 2020 Season 2 campaign for the PRL Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings, is underway from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Green flag is out.
See immediately a good run by Regan Jr. on the top side. She looked like he got away a little bit better than Charles Sumner.
Able to keep it side by side. A big pinch that time going into 1 and 2 to start off the race. But as seen throughout the night so far and throughout the week on the iRacing service, if you don't start at the bottom, you need to find a hole in quickly.
Yeah, and what's interesting is actually the bottom line's fragmented quite a bit, so there's quite a few openings down there, but drivers on the top line were so tight together, they're actually struggling to get down right now. Regan Jr., one of the drivers who is still stuck on the top side.
Charles Sumner leads the first lap of the race. Regan Jr. still trying to power on the outside line. He clears the question. Yes, he does. Down the back straightaway. He wants the race lead. Dives to the inside. The Ford Mustang dives his way to the point.
Yeah, it was an excellent crossover move there. Just used all that extra momentum he had by running the top line. Able to get straight underneath Charles Sumner as they got on the back stretch. It easily clears him through 3 and 4.
So much of the field already single filed out. And this is, as you talked about, where it can get pretty rhythmatic even on the short run already in this type of race tonight, to try and make sure you're prepared for the mid to long run.
Yeah, this is a difficult track when it comes to tires. We don't tend to see drivers blowing tires at this track, but obviously the tire temperatures with so much banking, they do get very, very high. And we also see that usually the Robert N line will put much less stress on the tires. That obviously is the bottom line. So anytime you're stuck on that top side, it's really, really going to punish those tires.
Right now, Sumner still able to keep up right now with Regan Jr. Has the fastest lap of the race so far at 29.045 with the draft. Lane still in third, while Adam Zemke, driving with the U.S. Army style colors tonight, rounds out the top 4. Joshua Daniels already losing touch though with the top 4. currently about 4 or 5 car lengths in the 77.
One thing with a little bit lower car count tonight, it does actually allow drivers to play a little bit different strategy. We almost had an incident there going into turn 1. Brendan Chatley, and I'm not sure who else was involved, but there was the car down on the apron on the entry to turn 1.
Thomas Morris, yeah. Him and Thomas Morris take bumpers and paint at the bottom of turn 1. We'll see if we can take a look at this on the GSRC replay. Got really dicey on turn 1 entry. You'll see right here they get side by side. Morris gets the run through the quad oval, but right about here, they start making contact. This demolishes the front nose of Morris's car.
Yeah, that definitely looked like Morris was trying to run a little bit higher line into the corner, and Chatley was not really wanting to run right by the wall. And this is a very difficult turn 1, actually. It's probably one of the hardest turn 1s on any mile-and-a-half oval. The wall does kind of come in as you get to the turn-in point. You see Chatley there, not in that third lane, actually kind of straddling those dashed white lines, and Morris was obviously trying to use that second lane to turn in, and Chatley was there.
Chatley able to keep it clean, but Morris, as mentioned, did damage the front nose from that contact. He's been now shuffled to 18th. Up towards the front, though, still single-filed out where it's Regan Jr., Sumner, Lane, Zemke, Daniels rounding out the top 5. And Charles Sumner put in a lot of practice laps for tonight, almost 100 total in the span of 2+ hours in preparation for this race at Charlotte.
Yeah, we see Charles Sumner usually does come away with a top 10 finish in these races, but it's actually rare that we see him right at the point of the races. So to be running second right now, he's doing a great job. We'll have to see if his long run performance can match his short run, but definitely if we get some late race restarts, he's going to be there.
And when you think back too, this is around in the wintertime in season 1. Or check that in 2019's campaigns. There was a lot of speed for Charles Sumner and a few others at this racetrack. Sumner at some points ran to the top 5 here at Charlotte, under the lights.
Yeah, and that experience is definitely going to play in. And this is a little bit of a specialist track. We do sometimes see some drivers who just really, really take to this racetrack, and it is a little bit different. We see a lot higher arcs. You see there on the entry to turn 3, drivers turning in very, very late compared with other mile-and-a-halves. And I think some drivers really, really get to grips with that a lot better than others, and it looks like Charles Sumner's one of them.
Still holding on to Colton Lane. As you look on board with him, he's having a different look tonight. Has a bit of a throwback to Mark Martin's former, now called Xfinity Series paint schemes. Designed by Rescue Graphics, the Wetback Racing machine. Looking like he wants second, showing the nose. And there's Sumner. He knew that he was holding up Lane. Went over the radio last time by Christian to ask if he wanted to go.
Yeah, and I think that's smart so early on. You really kind of do want to run your own race, and it is spreading out pretty quickly, so what's the sense in fighting and stacking up more cars behind you? If there's an opportunity to let a faster car go and a gap that you can slot into, you really should take it this early on.
Already closed in about a car length and a half on the back end of Regan Jr. in 1 lap alone. Just past 10 laps in, coming to the conclusion of lap 11 this time by. As everyone gets into that rhythm flow. Lane, though, has a good chance of trying to get a good run here. A good head of steam down the front straightaway. Another car length and a half closed up in the quad oval.
Yeah, this is a situation where Richard Regan Jr. has to be quite careful here, because we do see that the lead car can't really get away. Obviously, there's a big suck-up effect. We see that here, Colton Lane just cruising up to the back bumper as he gets to turn 3. And if you are the leader, you can really hurt your own tires by just pushing the car hard, and you won't get any benefit. You'll just kind of pull the next guy along in line with you. And actually looking back through the pack, we see 2 drivers I'm keeping an eye on, Pat Harvey and Jay Felton. Both of them have been really, really good when it comes to tire saving, and I think that's exactly what they're doing right now. They're just kind of hanging out at the back end of the top 10. I think we'll see them come to the 4 as we get to the end of this run.
Yeah, you mentioned the 5 as well as the 67. They're actually running faster than the leaders at the back end of the lead train at the moment. So right now they're saving, and they're starting to have people let them go. You see Baker just in the backdrop letting drivers go. Zemke also looking to make a move as well. Makes the pass on Sumner to take away 3rd position. So everyone's playing that long game, knowing big picture. Why hold up the faster driver when you can think big picture, try and save your tires, let them go, and then see if you can close back on them if they burn up their stuff in the long run?
Yeah, this is definitely a strategy race, and as we see the field is stringing out, and with those opportunities to drop in line without losing so many spots, there is the ability to run a little bit easier. And I think the probability of this going green the entire way is very, very high, and I think everybody knows that.
Absolutely. Right now at the top, 19-0, separated by just about 8 seconds on the racetrack. A majority of the top 10 within about 1.7 seconds. Bit of contact. Bisson Jr. and Sumner just played bumper tag. The backdrop of the lead pack, and now Sumner dropping back even more so. Lane, though, still is just keeping within range right now in that 60 machine. And when you think about the potential of the pit strategy, that's kind of got to be the range for drivers, including him and Sumner, where if you can keep within a couple seconds of the leader, it opens up a lot of strategy doors. If you fall 4 or 5 seconds back, that's where it can cause trouble. Yeah, we usually see that the difference between one lap either side of, say, when the leader pits, it's about 1 to 1.5 seconds difference. So I think anybody within 2 seconds of the leader is really in play. And as you say, when you fall back to 4 or 5 seconds, you kind of fall out of that fight, because the leader can long pit you by 1 to 2 laps and still come out in front of you, and you'll have a 2-lap tire disadvantage, and really nothing that you can do to change that. Right now you can see just in front of him, though, as well, a few drivers burning up a lot of their tires on the onboard. Daniels tried to make a move and did on the outside line, defending Robert Bisson Jr., and that held up that whole entire grouping a little bit more. Now, one thing to note, though, with the 77 machine, earlier this week it was announced that they have inked a full season deal with AthleteBooker.com to sponsor Joshua Daniels in his race car and PRL Cup Series competition. Glad to have them on board as one of the sponsors here in this series for the respective cars. Well, it's glad to see someone come into the sport like that. Yeah, and a very different scheme than we usually see him have on the car there, and obviously that's great news for him. It's going to help him out a lot, both in this series and elsewhere. So a great job by him, and obviously being in championship contention is going to help you with inking those deals. Absolutely. Right now, that car is currently running in 4th position and is currently running about a 10.5 quicker than the race leader. However, is currently still about 1.2 seconds back from the race lead. We've mentioned the different looks so far for Colton Lane, for Adam Zemke, for Joshua Daniels, but of course have to talk about the race leader, Richard Regan Jr., and this is in connection to Memorial Day with the 46 machine. As in real life, many drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series honor the fallen on their respective cars on the windshield banner. Tonight, Richard Regan Jr. is doing the same on his Ford Mustang. A friend of his told him about the person he is honoring tonight. Eric was an Armament First Class in the 90th Logistics Readiness Squadron. His fellow comrades describe Eric as a natural-born leader, always pushing his comrades to be better and to give them a little bit of extra motivation. Unfortunately, Eric was KIA on June 10, 2007 when an IED hit his convoy. Eric M. Barnes was only 20 years old. He was able to reach out to his mother as well, in fact, and told her about sim racing and asked the family personally if he could honor Eric tonight on the car. The mother was very happy to hear that Richard Regan Jr. will be honoring Eric's name this evening, Christian. And it's a great thing. As you say, obviously we see this in real life, and it's really cool to see drivers in the sim doing the same thing, and obviously doing a great job of honoring him by running in the lead right now. And I think if he can park this car in victory lane, that'll be the best thing that he can do tonight. He also always said he wanted to serve personnel. Richard Regan Jr. told me earlier today, but he can't personally, so he always likes to honor heroes tonight. He leads by almost a full second to the head of the field, by the way, in this race. Only 57 laps to go. Behind them, though, things are getting pretty busy. Jay Felton, you talked about him and his ability to save tires for the long run. He is starting to fly. And, oh, look at the clock. It's around lap 20 time. Yeah, and I've actually been keeping an eye on him, and it looked like he was just stuck behind Robert Bisson Jr. for a couple of laps right there, but now he's managed to clear him, and next car in line, it looks like it's Colton Lane, who's behind Joshua Daniels. Daniels
Looks like maybe he's trying to save a little bit himself, or maybe he ran a little bit too hard too early, as we see Jay Felton get to the bottom of Colton Lane now. It's going to be a difficult pass, though, because he's going to have a car in front of him. He's going to have dirty air on the nose.
A little bit of a squeeze from Lane, nearly bobbled off the crest of the hill. Keep in mind, Lane does have a bit of right side damage that could be affecting him as well in the straights. Even a touch bit of it this week on that right front fender can cost you a couple miles an hour and a couple tenths a lap.
Yeah, this is a track where it's very, very high speed, very, very detrimental to have damage because it's almost all entirely aero-based. So any right side damage, especially to that right front, really does slow you down.
See him able to file back on into line just behind the 3 machine of Bisson Jr. But as you mentioned, Felton, it's going to be a question of how much can he close in here before drivers start to pit. Estimated about 15 laps or so. As we take a look from Bisson Jr.'s perspective, he tries to keep within range of the 5 and the 77.
Yeah, you see Jay Felton's getting to the inside of Joshua Daniels here. He's going to have this pass completed as they come off of 4, I think. Daniels holding good on the top side, though. Doesn't look like Felton's got a big enough run, but I think he's going to get him through 1 and 2. But all while this is happening, it's allowing Richard Regan Jr. to extend that lead. And right now, this group, 2.3 seconds behind for Jay Felton that time by.
And Adam Zemke got reeled in quickly, had something go wrong with that car where it seemed to glitch off and on in gear. Went off and on at about 160-something odd miles an hour, back between full throttle and neutral for a good half of the straightaway, and that cost him about 5-6 car lengths on the track.
A very strange issue. I haven't seen that happen before, but as you say, obviously it's hurt him a lot in terms of lap time. Lost nearly half a second right there to Richard Regan Jr. and falling back towards the clutches of Jay Felton now in 3rd.
Yeah, right inside drafting range. Felton, by the way, the fastest driver of the racetrack last time by half a second in some cases to some of the cars. That's how much he closed up to Zemke, a tenth a lap quicker than Regan Jr. Now at this point, we are inside the fuel window now, Christian. You mentioned around lap 40, you expect a majority of the drivers to come in where you can split the race in 2. Who do you see as candidates, in your opinion, to try the undercut?
I definitely think one driver that we have to watch for that is Paul Williams II. He normally does those kind of out there strategies, and I think we should be looking to see him coming down as one of the first. He's actually in the 11th spot right now, only 4 seconds off the lead, but it's going to be difficult for him to advance further on this run. There's really only 10 laps to go, and I think that's going to work against him. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him down as early as 35.
As this is going on, Sumner's been reeled on in by a few more cars and letting more drivers go. This time, Pat Harvey. He's now trying to get a run back, though. Harvey didn't get a good run off of turn 2. Elects to try and push the Tennessee driver instead. So Sumner has just been slipping more and more on backward, it seems, as the tires have gone on away from the 98.
And up at the front, Jay Felton's got a big run on Zemke. He's got to his inside as they get down to turn 1. Looked like he was using almost some of that red paint down there to get this move done, but it's an opportunity now. They've replaced what was grass with some kind of strangey astroturfy tarmac type deal, and it's really got a lot of grip. You will pick up a 1X by using it, but it definitely doesn't unsettle your car.
I think the technical term is artificial turf, but it's not as simple as, oh hey, you can just cut through the grass and immediately have 100% grip. It still can be pretty slippery, especially the transition from artificial turf to pavement.
Oh, it can, and we actually saw that last year in the Coca-Cola series. We saw one driver take all the way down to the grass trying to avoid an incident, came back onto the track at full speed, and just lost control of the car immediately. So it's something you got to treat with respect, but definitely that first dogleg with that red AstroTurf down there, you can absolutely use that to facilitate a pass.
We have had one pit stop, by the way. Steven Durbin, who was at the back of the field, elected to come in after smacking the wall with his right front fender. So drivers are starting to peel off here. Zemke, since his technical issue, though, he is dropping and quickly really dancing off the corners.
It looks like he's going to be struggling to hold on to that 3rd spot. We see Robert Bissot Jr. has actually done a great job of saving his tires, remaining quite conservatively early on, but now going to move himself up into that 3rd spot.
And And one of the main things when it comes to the tire saving is, and this was a factor that didn't realize would be something until personally trying it myself in Charlotte, is the left rear, where if you heat and burn up that tire, that's where it causes a lot of the bobbling for apex off.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes down to just pure rotation through the corner, it's almost all down to the right front. But as you say, when it comes down to getting off the corner, it's actually, a lot of drivers like to think about burning off the right rear, but in a lot of cases with these cars now, it's actually the left rear tire that when that gets hot, you tend to lose a significant amount of drive off. And as you say, it makes the car pretty difficult to handle actually when you get back in the gas, because it'll just start to move around a lot in the rear. And obviously it's such a high-speed racetrack, you really don't have a lot of margin for error.
And it can absolutely cause potential trickiness in some groupings. It was seen throughout the week here on the iRacing service. By the way, Brenton Chatley is also ducked into pit lane. So 2 drivers have now elected to pit. Both of those cars, however, did have damage. Approaching halfway in this race, coming to 44 laps to go here at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the 9th race of the season. Richard Regan Jr. has ran away from the field. He is evened out in terms of time, Christian, to Jay Felton. In fact, at times he's been cleaning quicker laps by a couple 100ths of a second each time. Has a car having trouble in front of him, though. It's Chad Brown, who danced around and smacked the wall a bit.
And all whilst that was happening, Adam Zemke and I think Charles Sumner came down pit road. So they're doing an early pit stop on lap 36.
Chad Brown peeling off the racetrack. 2 did peel off to the pit lane, so Sumner and Zemke electing to go for the undercut, and both of those drivers were quickly dropping down the running order. Sumner letting drivers go who he felt were quicker. Zemke, with that technical issue, lost the advantage he had on the track and was quickly sliding and lost the bottom as well. So this could open up the floodgates because J.D. Baker has also followed suit.
Yeah, and these were drivers that were obviously running inside the top 10, and as you say, as soon as drivers see some who are running around them come down, we see Zemke's having a very long stop. He's obviously got some severe technical issue at this point.
And or potential speeding too. One thing when it comes to this track is, with the updated version of Charlotte, was when the Roval was instituted here, it built that wall on the pit entry. It can be difficult to determine where the line is and to make sure you get down to speed without getting a penalty.
Yeah, the cone's quite far along, but as you say, that pit wall does present some interesting difficulties. We've seen some drivers get very, very close to hitting it actually, because there's no opportunity to run through the grass like you would on a normal missed pit entry. You see Dan McLaren now coming down.
And the Neonism sponsored machine overruns his pit stall and stalled out the engine, so lots of time being lost here for the 73, at least 3-4 seconds in the stall, at least potentially a few more on the track.
And as we saw with how close it is inside that top 10, that's going to be a huge loss for him, and any advantage by pitting early is definitely going to have been lost here.
Off and away, McLaren, 15.9 seconds inside the pit box. By the way, Zemke did get speeding, 55-second serve. Chad Brown also had a speeding penalty. Regan Jr. coming into the pit lane. Jay Felton now leads his first laps as a result.
Yeah, you see that Jay Felton actually hasn't managed to get away from this grouping. He's got Robert Bissell Jr. and Joshua Daniels running right behind him.
And at this point, if you're any of these drivers, it may be important to follow suit, do you think?
I think once you got past the halfway point of the race, and obviously I've said it before, but I think there's a high probability that this goes green to the end. I think you've got to come down within the next 1 to 2 laps. You see Joshua Daniels coming down. I really don't think there's any advantage to running longer than lap 42 here, because you simply run out of the time to make up the time lost that you've had. You see Richard Regan Jr. rolling off the pit road right now.
Off and away, as you mentioned, the 77 following soon into the pit box. And it can be tricky with the pit exit here, especially right there where Regan Jr. is. If you bobble up that racetrack and come across the blue line, that is a blue commitment cone violation. You'd have to serve a penalty. A couple drivers had trickiness with that, practicing that pit exit today.
Yeah, it's extremely bumpy on the apron down there, and obviously you're trying to maximize the exit speed, and there is a bump right as you come off the corner that's right by where that blue cone is, and if you're just slightly too high and it jogs the car to the right, you will get that commitment line violation.
More pit stops. Felton bringing Harvey and Callahan with them this time for service. Callahan and Harvey, though, gained a decent amount of time in the pit stop sequence on their entries as well. Only a couple seconds behind as one more driver joins in Bisson Jr. at the end of the lane.
Yeah, no, and obviously the pit cycle with the difficulty of getting on and off the pit road is a place where you can both gain and lose a lot of time. If you execute it perfectly, you can gain at least half a second there, which with how small the gaps were at the front of the field, that's a huge gain.
So he's in the pit box, Bisson Jr., and getting 4 tires and fuel for his race car. Paul Williams II also electing to come into the pit lane at the other end of said lane this time. So Richard Regan Jr. currently in your net race lead. Currently, the next car for position behind was about 1.6 seconds behind. That was Charles Sumner he just got by just moments ago.
You see, this has worked out really, really well for Richard Regan Jr. He's now got clear track in front of him, and he can just rip off lap times really till the pit cycle ends, and that's the best case scenario.
And a couple of my teammates said this, and I think this is coming up to a great point here, especially since we've had about 1.7 seconds of fall from 29 flats to 31.3s. Well, if you pit first with about a 1 or 2 lap difference, it may be the difference between winning or losing. It came into play, for example, earlier today in NIS competition. It's coming into play tonight as Scotty Johnson comes in.
Yeah, it absolutely can, and that's where we see when there's a difference in strategy with some drivers staying out and some drivers on new tires. We see the guys on new tires, they have to be so aggressive, because if they sit behind a car on old tires for even a lap or two, they're losing realistically their entire run length advantage, because they will lose nearly a full second each time they get stuck behind a car. So coming out in clean track and just being able to click off lap times is a huge deal.
Drivers currently trying to click off as many green flag laps and hoping for a caution flag. There's 2. Thomas Morris, David A. Wilson Jr. are both trying to stretch out their fuel and tires. Again, the most you can go is about 66-ish laps on fuel. They might actually fight for this, but they're only 14 seconds ahead, and majority of the field has unlapped themselves. But if they were to get a caution flag, this would put them at least 5-10 positions higher than they would have been before.
Yeah, that's the gamble here. They're banking on staying out long enough so that the drivers who have pitted will come down again if a yellow does come out. But there's obviously that crossover point, as you say, only 14 seconds in the lead. Means that by the time they get out to lap 60, they're probably gonna have lost the lead.
Thomas Morris aborted. Regan Jr., he's running away a little bit from Sumner. Sumner just hanging on to the back end of the draft. So just one driver is trying to stretch. The gap is now under 12 seconds. And the gap between him and Felton, more than 6 seconds after the pit stop sequence.
Yeah, that's a huge gap for Felton to catch up. I'm not quite sure why he's a full 6 seconds behind, but obviously with only just over 30 laps to go, that's a lot of time to be having to run back down, and I don't think it's a realistic probability right now.
Last of the drivers who had yet to pit have just also came in. Wilson Jr. elected to also back out of the strategy call. He is the last driver to come in, and he'll have the freshest tires on the track in the 39 machine. So that puts Regan Jr. back up to the race lead, Sumner in second. Then the next drivers behind that are interesting, just in front of where Felton is for the battle for third. Baker and Chatley elected to go for the undercut. They're currently in the mix of the fight for right now in that spot, about 4 seconds now officially behind the 46.
Yeah, that's another thing that's going to work against Jay Felton here. Obviously, he's got cars that he's got to work his way by, and every time you got to pass somebody, it's costing you time. And Regan Jr. is out there running on his own. He's just all he's got to do is just be consistent, and it's going to make it very, very difficult for him to be caught.
Last time by gained a 10th or 2 and does have a bit of traffic to deal with. You see to the left side, Wilson Jr. coming off to the left side, Felton should say, off the pit lane. 29 laps to go this time by though. At this point though, based on what you've seen so far, do you think Felton can put enough laps to close up this gap, as well as others such as Joshua Daniels and co, who are looking to reel him in about P5 on back?
I have a feeling that Jay Felton's going to get to a certain point, maybe about 2 seconds behind, and then we're going to see Richard Regan Jr. just start to up the pace a little bit. I feel like we saw that in the last run. As soon as Felton got to the head of that line, all of a sudden he stopped gaining, and it really looked to me like Regan Jr. had just been running a pace to keep himself in the lead, but not having to push himself any harder than that. So I think we're going to see the same thing here again.
Indeed, by the way, Sumner has fallen off to the 30.4s last time by and is stuck in traffic. So Felton has a chance already to get up to second position. You see it in the backdrop from the New England region-based driver. Remember, though, as well, Regan Jr. needed to gain a certain amount of points to clinch the championship heading into Kansas. Currently not in that window to do so, should know Christian. Would still need to have a solid race at this current point to come away with the championship in race number 10.
Yeah, and obviously there is that factor of him not having that drop round, or at least having that worst drop round to contend with, so he definitely is going to need a consistent run next week, but he's putting in the groundwork this week to really make that a reality.
The worst point total earned from Regan Jr. on the season, 25. Daniels, 34 entering tonight. By the way, P2, that's going to change hands as Jay Felton makes the move on Charles Sumner. And remember, Sumner is on that undercut strategy on a bit older tires by about 5 laps or so.
I think this is where we're going to see Sumner's going to start to regret that decision. He's throwing the shot right there. Pretty much everybody else, Joshua Daniels, JD Baker, Robert Bissau Jr., Danny Cervantes, all pretty close behind. It's 25 laps to go. It's going to be difficult for him to hold on to that third spot.
We haven't mentioned Danny Cervantes' name all night, it seems, this evening since qualifying. He qualified 18th, one of the biggest movers, in fact, the biggest mover of the race. Take a look on board, up to 7th position, just outside the draft, though, of Bissau Jr. and company.
Yeah, and he played a little bit of an undercut strategy, but it wasn't as aggressive as, say, Charles Sumner. He's actually got a 5-lap advantage on Sumner right now, so I think there's a strong probability that he's going to get to Sumner and pass him.
Speaking of passes, Bissau Jr. does make the pass on JD Baker, who was also on that undercut strategy. So the 78 starting to slide down the pylon in these final 23.5 laps here from Charlotte. To reset the gap for the lead is about 3.3 seconds here. And remember, these drivers approaching the end of the campaign. Season 3 registration opened up in the past couple weeks as well, Christian. Many drivers returning from this season to compete next season. As well, though, a couple notables who didn't compete in Season 2, returning to the track of the Cup cars. Jeffrey Ford, Doyle Lorenz, Adam Young, Josh Slade, amongst the drivers expected to return for Season 3.
Yeah, obviously a couple of names that we've heard there before, and Josh Slade was a driver who had some good performances, and I'd be interested to see him back in Season 3 and see what he can do.
Yeah, and Doyle Lorenz, of course, a notable name on GSRC coverage, should rather say, where he's been a part of many different series that have been on the network over the years, as Callahan makes the move on Chatley here for P number 8. We haven't talked much about Callahan. Didn't gain any positions until after the pit stop sequence, Christian. Now +2 in the race.
Yeah, he's had a pretty quiet night so far, but he does have some of the best tires out there. Actually got a decent advantage on a couple of drivers ahead of him. JD Baker, who's got a 5-lap advantage on. Joshua Daniels actually got just a 1-lap advantage, but then we still got Charles Sumner, who is out there on some of the oldest tires. You see Brandon Chatley right there. He's on similar tires to Sumner, and you can see the difference. Just not able to maintain pace right now with Callahan.
And remember, does have a bit of damage. The left rear quarter panel is crinkled in from that initial contact early in the race in turn 1. That ended up being with Thomas Morris. And he just so happens to be having one of the drivers on the newest tires. Williams the second trying to charge on forward. And Williams the second surprised he didn't try to stretch it a bit further based on his history. And remember last year, it was a 2-tire call for his teammate, for Josue Tellez, that won Tellez the race here at Charlotte and then the following truck race at Dover.
Yeah, a little bit surprising that Williams II actually decided to take the long pit option. I really thought he was going to take the short pit, but he looks like he's making that work right now. Obviously already back up in the 9th spot. A huge tire advantage on a lot of drivers ahead of him as well.
Tire advantage also coming into play for Bisson Jr. for the battle for 3rd as well. Coming home from 4th is Joshua Daniels on the bottom side. I'll move back Sumner if he gets the run on the exit of turn 3 and 4. Back to P5. Daniels, it looks like, electing to be more patient for this entry this time, electing to be waiting an lap or so. But at this point, if you're some of the drivers who went for the undercut, they might be having to hope for a caution. The problem is, majority of the field spread itself out by at least 5+ car lengths in some groupings.
Yeah, and that's where the drivers who short pitted, they've really kind of doubled down on their short run speed, because as you say, they're banking on a caution coming out, but it's actually a lot of the drivers we saw short pitting were some of the drivers that were struggling at the end of that first long run. So now they're going to have to run even longer than they did that first time, and with that tire disadvantage, I think they're going to really start to struggle as we get to the last 15 laps of this race.
Closing stages of this race, coming to 16 laps to go. And Daniels doing whatever he needs to do to keep still within point eligibility to compete for the championship this season. Still is about 6.5 seconds back, could get to as high as 3rd, depending on how things shake out even in the closing stages of this race. Your thoughts, though, on how this has flowed out tonight? We're expecting to be very clean tonight. It's been very clean, just 1 or 2 bits of car contact all evening.
Yeah, I think this has played out pretty much exactly as I was expecting, with just a lot of strategy, not so much I don't want to say on-track battles, we have seen them, but it's really been a strategy race. And actually right now, just looking at the lead pair, we've got Regan Jr. around a 30.85 last time by, Jay Felton a 30.65, so he is catching him, but 2.8 seconds behind with 15 laps to go. That's a lot harder to make up than it sounds, and obviously we're seeing a couple of other drivers throughout the field. See Joshua Daniels, he's had a solid run. He's been in the top 5 all night, just hasn't been able to match the pace of Regan Jr.
Let's take a quick listen on board with Daniels as he makes his way around the track and off a turn 2 and down the back straightaway for a second.
See right here that high entry, and drivers struggling to get down to that blue and white line. Bissell Jr. there missed it a little bit, had to really crank the car off the wall as he came off the floor that time.
And you can hear as well just how much they're having to play with the throttle to make sure they can get to the blue line if they're able to get to it at that time of the apex.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It really is kind of having to play an audible every single corner, because if you don't quite get the line right, then the throttle input that's required is actually very, very different, and it's a very challenging track in that regard. It looks quite simple, but it's really not. It's one of the hardest 1.5 miles to get right.
Absolutely. As Daniel still trying to just keep within range, has gone about even, though, compared to the pace of Bisson Jr. the past 3 laps or so. In fact, it's been slower on 5-lap averages, according to JRT timing. Speaking of timing and scoring, once again, remind you can find timing and scoring at GSRC.tv. Once again, GSRC.tv to find out where your favorite driver is on the racetrack. If you're a fan of Danny Cervantes, he continues his march up forward through the field. He is one of the fastest cars on the track. He is now having a chance to move inside the top 5 for the first time.
Yeah, and he's doing a mega job right here. You see he's got a big run on Sumner. Sumner's just letting him go. He knows that he can't fight that pace, but Danny Cervantes has comparable tires to our lead pair. He's on 27 lap-old tires. Jay Felton and Richard Regan Jr. are on 26 and 28 lap-old tires, and he's actually running the same pace, and if not faster, actually. So he's doing a great job.
He has been blistering quick. We mentioned a lot of the average pace and timings off and on here tonight. He is dead on just about with what the leaders have been doing on their past 5 laps each and every time around the racetrack. He might have a chance to steal away a podium finish if he keeps up this pace with 10 laps to go.
It's going to be difficult for him to get to Bissell Jr. Obviously, he's going to have to get by Daniels first, but I think he's got a shot at it with 10 laps and the pace differential that he has. If he can clear Daniels quickly, I think he's got a shot at this 3rd place.
Pushed up the hill that time, though. with a little bit quicker, trying to come off the entrance all the way to the apex. Missed the bottom in 1 and 2, nearly smacked the wall. He's trying to push hard, but at the same time, if you push too hard, you risk smacking that wall hard in the fence and killing your momentum in your car.
Yeah, and that's something that you've really got to pace yourself with. If you see that you've got a pace advantage, the key to it is to let it play out. You can't try and force more lap time out of the car. It's simply not there. You just have to run what you've got and just watch yourself close slowly up to the back of the car ahead of you, not make mistakes, and hope that just them seeing you in the mirror closing up to them is going to force them into an error. And actually, it looks like Joshua Daniels is starting to come back to Bissell Jr.
Yeah, started to get really closer to the back bumper in the past couple laps after Bissell Jr. fell to the 9s. As we followed on board with Daniels from just around the left side of the head of the driver. You can see the pace last time by, nearly just about a full tenth quicker.
Yeah, you can actually see it from the in-car as well. Actually, Joshua Daniels running pretty high right there, higher than I expected him to. But you see Bissell Jr.'s car really pushing up the track through 3 and 4. Thought he was going to get into the wall on the exit there, but in 1 and 2 last time by, he really couldn't keep the car down on the bottom line, and he pushed up a lot when it got to the corner exit.
Daniels starting to lose a bit more time once again down the back straightaway. Lost another car length coming off at turn number 2. By the way, Sumner, just the backdrop you might have noticed as well, he's now trying to fight Danny Cervantes after Cervantes is now falling off a cliff in his pace.
Yeah, it's pretty strange what we're seeing here, actually. We're seeing some drivers have a sudden burst of speed. We obviously saw Cervantes as just cruise past Sumner like he had like 15 lap better tires. I mean, he didn't, but that's what it looked like. And now all of a sudden Sumner is actually back on the back of Cervantes.
I wonder if he pushed so hard trying to compensate from the older tires that he might have overheated said tires, and now that's making him tight and might have burned out the right front.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we do see with this tire. We see some drivers, and right there, Cervantes got very, very tight, and now Sumner's got a run on him.
Once again, Cervantes playing hard defense. Bit of a chuck up again from Sumner. Cervantes again sent it very hard on the entrance, and this time just barely got to the blue line off of turn 2.
It's definitely an opportunity for Sumner to steal this place back in the last 5 laps of the race.
Under 5 laps to go, coming to 4 laps to go for this battle. This is for the final spot inside the top 5. Cervantes, not a good run coming off of 3 and 4. Sumner again poking, goes for the cross. Bit of a cutoff. Major block heading through the exit of the quad.
And all whilst this is happening, you see that 7 car, Paul Williams, one of our last drivers to pit. He's got a huge pace advantage over this pair right now. He's running 2 to 3 tenths a lap faster, so he's about to get in amongst this fight.
It's about to get exciting here for 5th position, to say the very least. Sumner this time not able to close back up off 3 and 4. May have 1, maybe 2 more shots of a pass for Cervantes. 3 laps to go from Charlotte.
Whilst this is going on, we've got up ahead, Robert Bissell Jr. has got Joshua Daniels still just ghosting behind him, and I'm wondering if Daniels is waiting until the last 2 laps to really push the car hard and see if he can get that pass done for 3rd place.
2 laps to go this time, and Williams the second trying to diamond it off the corner. Trying to set up the pass. Daniels still riding behind the 3. Only about 2 tenths of a second behind. In the backdrop though, Williams the second, he's got a chance to try and make a couple passes in the final closing stages. He's trying to ramp it again as Sumner slow off turn 2.
And Williams the second with a great run on Sumner. Sumner with the draft of Cervantes, but it's not going to be enough to let him cover off that bottom line. Sumner's running the top. Williams has got a little bit tight on the bottom. It's just checked his run up, but still it's going to be enough to take that position away.
Williams the second takes away P6, but the white flag is out. 1 more lap to go for Richard Regan Jr. The defending series champion grows his point lead even more so tonight. For the 5th time in Season 2 in 2020, Richard Regan Jr. is a winner in the PRL Cup Series sponsored by Diecast Kings. He dominates at Charlotte. Felton in second, Bissell Jr., Daniels, Cervantes rounds out your top 5. and a phenomenally dominant performance for Richard Christian.
Yeah, he did a great job, and one of the things that we've seen in the past with Regan Jr. is sometimes on the long runs he's come under fire for not quite having the best tire saving abilities some of the other drivers out here, but looks like this season, especially the second half, he's really worked on that. And there's been times when he's had drivers behind him who've had better tires and he's still been able to outrun them. So he's definitely patching some of his weaknesses, and I think tonight, full green flag run, 80 laps, really showed the class that he has.
Richard Regan Jr. will now burn it down at Charlotte Motor Speedway, America's home for racing. We'll take a step aside when we come back while post-race coverage. You're watching the PRL Cup Series sponsored by Diecast Kings, live from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina. Everyone to the Global SimRacing Channel for tonight's coverage of the PRL Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings, the official title sponsor of the PRL Cup Series, and by ButtKicker. It was an entertaining race tonight from Charlotte Motor Speedway, where Richard Regan Jr. came home with the victory by more than 2 seconds after leading 70 of 80 laps in a green flag to checkered flag race tonight. Jay Feldon finished off in second after starting in ninth, with Robert Bisson Jr. rounding out the top three. All three of those drivers will be joining us for post-race coverage in just a few moments. Danny Cervantes came home in top 5 after trying to close in on Joshua Daniels, was able to hold off Owens II and Charles Sumner to the checkered flag tonight. Jimmy Baker finished in 8th after trying the undercut strategy. Tristan Callahan with a quiet race finished in 9th, and Brendan Shatley rounded out the top 10 Christian.
And just missing out in the top 10 tonight was Pat Harvey. I thought he was going to really shine with such a long race, but unfortunately only comes home in 11th. As Scotty Johnson made up 4 spots, comes home 12th, starting in 16th. Driver who started 3rd, Colton Lane, actually fell all the way back to 13th. and Stephen Durbin comes home in 14th. Dan McLaren 15th. The last driver on the lead lap was David Wilson Jr. 16th, and then Thomas Morris, we saw him have that incident early on, but no caution, so unfortunately carried damage all the way throughout the race, comes home 17th. Adam Zemke had that speeding on pit road, comes home 18th. Chad Brown, first official retirement, 7 laps down in 19th.
Brent Bradley Cholly, race director for the series, did not make it to the start for a second consecutive race this evening, but it's Richard Regan Jr. coming away with a season-leading and dominating 5th victory in 2020 Season 2. Richard, first things first, how do you feel coming away with the checkered flag and winning now over 50% of the races in 2020 Season 2?
Yeah, feels good. We're picking up a lot of momentum. Hoping to be able to carry that momentum to the championship race next week. And yeah, just keep having these good finishes and hope it carries into Season 3 as well.
How was it to try and put in this dominating pace tonight? Because for much of the race, you were the quickest car on the track and ran away and broke the draft within about 15-20 laps of the green flag tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know, I used to be horrible long run, and that's been my main thing that I've been practicing these past few weeks, is trying to get the long run speed up. And I'm still not there 100%, but I'm starting to get there. All these guys are still wicked fast on long run, and I got to give a huge shout out to Bradley Hawley, because he taught me the hard way of how to save the car in the long run, and a few other guys in the series, because they used to kick my butt. So we just got to keep practicing these races and keep putting in the laps and trying to keep saving that right front tire. I was hoping that when I came down pit road that they were going to come down the very next lap, but they ended up staying out 2 laps earlier. So 2 laps later, I mean. So as soon as I saw that, I really tried to back it down after I got that little bit of a gap on Charles, and because tires, this track eats up the tires, so just had to keep them on the car.
Speaking of on the car tonight, we talked a little bit earlier today. We talked about it during the broadcast as well. Eric Barnes on the car this evening. How does it feel to win, not just for your championship's sake, but as well for the Barnes family and for Eric?
Yeah, it definitely feels good to give Eric and the whole Barnes family a very strong performance, and get them in victory lane, and just bring Eric's name out, and I don't know if you guys talked about his story at all during the broadcast, but Eric died after they hit an IED, his convoy, when he was only 20 years old. So he was very young, and it was very sad, and he paid the ultimate price for our freedom, and I'm just very thankful for him and all the others that serve and have died in action, and for giving us the freedom, and letting us be able to actually sim race and come out here and enjoy it.
Absolutely. Once again, glad you took the time to recognize the service brought on by Mr. Barnes for tonight. But the next and final race of the season, Kansas. Your thoughts on Kansas?
Kansas is tough. It depends on how the track is, really, if the bottom's going to be relevant or not. Usually it's a top groove track, so it's very hard to pass. A lot of drafting there, so we're going to have to put in a lot of practice again, try to work on saving that right front, get a good qualifying effort, and try to stay up front, and try to lock down this championship.
Anyone you want to thank for being a part of your victory today?
Absolutely. I got to dedicate this whole race and this win to Eric Barnes and his family, and all the others that serve. I got to give a shout out to my mom, my dad, my aunt, and my stepmom for always watching. Got to give a shout out to everyone at Bobby Dale Earnhardt Legacy Esports for putting in the time to helping me become a better driver. I got to give a shout out to you guys at GSRC for broadcasting every week. And I got to give a shout out to my sponsors, ButtKicker, Shell, Craftsman, Susan G. Coleman, Multiple Sclerosis Society. If you need a paint, go to facebook.com/neonism. Tell them that I sent you. We'll hook you up with the paint. And just everyone that tunes in every week. And PRL is a great series to be in if you guys are looking into joining a league.
Just so happens to be registration still open for season number 3. But nonetheless, congratulations on the victory tonight.
Thank you, guys.
That was Richard Regenjur coming home in first tonight. Christian Challengers now standing by with their second place finisher, Jay Felton.
Jay, another strong run, started ninth and finished second. Looked like you were in that battle with Richard Regan Jr. for pretty much the entire race, and an interesting tactical battle from our standpoint in terms of the strategies that you guys decided to do. And one question I actually do have for you is you elected to long pit him by 2 laps, and your stint to the end was 37 laps. Neither driver elected to pit dead on 40. What kind of influenced that decision?
Listen, from my seat, Richard is dialed in, and if I'm going to compete with Richard, I'm going to have to up my game. And so at this point right now, Christian, I feel like I'm racing the rest of the field. I had run with Richard in a pit party, and I had nothing for him. I've got some work to do, and that's the long and short of that as far as that strategy was. And my qualifying, I thought I had put down a good lap, and I guess you said I started ninth. Well, it felt like 25th. Yeah, it seemed pretty far back there, and but I did the best I could, and as always, and I had a lot of fun racing, uh, especially in the first stage. The second stage, I'm sure, as far as the race went and everything, it would have been nice to have a caution to get us all closer together and provide more racing. But you know, I just have to give Richard credit. If I was on older time, I didn't feel like I could outrun him on equal equipment. I don't know how I'm going to do it on older equipment. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that definitely makes sense. And as you say, you started ninth, but it felt like 25th. I think that kind of illustrates how difficult it is to pass around this track, and you obviously had to cut through a lot of cars tonight. So how were you finding that in terms of the aero push and the actual passing around this racetrack?
I didn't think the aero push was as bad as some places we go. Um, and here's the funny thing about what was going on out there as far as my car went. The tires, tire wear wasn't that bad, but the fall off in time I thought was unbelievable. I think I had fallen off almost 2 seconds, if not 2 seconds, during a run, and runs were only 40 laps. So I thought my car drove okay. I had found some things that were working for me that I felt like was taking pressure off the right front tire, which, that's kind of how I think on corner entry and corner exit. Every corner, I'm just trying to relieve pressure on the right front. So, I found some things that were working, but, I got some work to do.
Well, it definitely looked like it was paying off, especially towards the end of the runs there. In that first run, you were very, very strong pace wise. And as you say, obviously the fall off was pretty large here tonight, but the wear quite low. And personally, my theory on that is that it's mainly the temperatures that actually cause that fall off. And obviously in fixed setup racing, it's difficult to get around that. And like you say, it all comes down to getting off that right front tire. And still, though, obviously a very strong performance, come home second. And before we let you go, is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Absolutely. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Diecast Kings and ButtKicker. Thanks for supporting our league, and I certainly will support you. And tonight, I want to thank the PRL. They do a lot of things right, and I've raced in a lot of leagues, and I've don't think I've ever been in a league, Christian, that was just so unbiased. When the penalties are being handed out, when we make mistakes, when we do things we shouldn't be doing, it's unbiased, and the admins get treated the same as the guy that's running 25th. And certainly they're hiring the best broadcaster on iRacing. So there's a lot of good things going on in PRL. And Christian, Justin, Sean, thanks for everything you do. You know I'm digging some GSRC, guys.
Thank you, Jay, for coming and giving us a great shout out and coming and chatting with us there. And obviously, as Jay said, in terms of the PRL league, it's a very, very well run league. We're glad to broadcast them. And if anybody would like to run in season 3, signups are currently open. And once again, congratulations on the second place finish this week, Jay.
A lot, Christian. It's great to talk to you again.
That was Jay Felden coming home in second tonight. Standing by now with the third place finisher, Robert Bisson Jr. Heck of a battle to try and hold on to third place tonight. How are you feeling about that battle?
I'm feeling great about it now. That's actually all week. That's the first time I beat Josh. We've been in a bunch of open races together, and he's beaten me every time, including a win. He passed me on the outside, so I'm just glad I finished ahead of him.
What's been the tricky thing about trying to beat Joshua, in your opinion, and how did you learn from those official races you were just talking about to beat him tonight in PRL competition?
So usually, I mean, it's save the tires. I'll save the tires. I'll catch them, but you try to turn it on with 15 laps to go, and he seems like even though he's slipping, he still has enough to stay ahead. And I mean, this time I was just ready. I knew to cover the outside in 1 and 2 if he actually was going to try it again, and then 3 and 4 I was going to stay low. But we didn't have to duel it out so much. He caught up to me, but could never get close enough tonight.
What made it so tricky, in your opinion, to make your way around the racetrack and continue forward progress, especially with how the tire wear and aero push could be a parts of the evening?
The tricky part was just trying to save. I mean, you're backing up your corner entry each time. You're trying to do that, and it's kind of risky doing that early in the race because some guys are, they want to go, they're moving forward, and they got the tire to do it at that time. So that's when you see a lot of lines overlapping each other and causing a lot of issues. I really felt like in this race, I saw Richard get out there in front, and nobody's really during the week been able to walk away from the field early on. So I figure he's going to get in a battle. He's going to waste his tires, and then we're going to be on top of him. But it ended up being 5 or 6 guys all of a sudden started battling for 4th or 5th place, and he walked away. By the time I got past that, he checked out, and pit stops happened, came out, had to go through some more cars again, and by the time it cleared, him and Jay were just walking away from me. I couldn't do anything for him.
Now, next race on the campaign goes to Kansas for the season finale. Your thoughts on going to Kansas and the challenges you expect?
I like the track. The points race right now, it's there was 8 points separating us and Waterback, and we kind of split positions tonight as well, so I'm not sure how close it is, but it's going to be close. It's going to come down to that last race. So I'm just hoping as a team we can try to get ahead of them. That's what it's all about in the last race. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Well, the gap between Skidmark and Waterback is 14 points. Knowing that information now, that is official data just coming in, how does that impact how your team takes the race now?
We're still going to do. I mean, we've been trying to qualify. Last season, we'd split it. We'd have 2 guys push hard in qualifying, have 1 guy kind of a safety net in the back, and it worked in a couple races that there's an early caution. I'm going to get some practice races in and actually see how these races go. If there's something like that on the horizon, maybe it'd be a safe bet to keep somebody in the back in case something like that happens. But other than that, we're going to just try to put in time, and you got to put in the practice and get the results at the end of the week.
Anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, friends and family that are watching, Diecast Kings, PRL for putting everything on. Great pole lap for Charles. He's he's dedicated so much time. I've been in PRL for probably 3 or 4 years now, and he dedicates more time than you can believe. Even on the console, when we were all racing consoles, he would set up the leagues. He would do broadcasts, write-ups. So it's great to see him up front with a pole, and had a good race too.
Congratulations on the top 3 tonight.
Thank you, guys.
That's Robert Bisson Jr. coming away with the 3rd place finish this evening. Now, a couple things to discuss. First things first, Christian, your thoughts on how this race played out tonight?
I think it was a great strategy battle, and As expected, it went green the entire way, and we saw a lot of variation in terms of pit cycles, and we saw a lot of good racing because of that. And I think it was interesting that we got a good opportunity to see which drivers were really, really strong on the long runs, which drivers were strong on the short runs. And I think tonight we clearly can see the drivers that are best at managing their tires. And I think with obviously the high temperatures in terms of the tire and going to Kansas next week, I think a lot of the same driving techniques will actually come into play. Just instead of being on the bottom of the racetrack, we'll see drivers ride it by that wall.
Now, the official points calculations right now see Daniels trailing Regan Jr. by 32 points. Remember, drop week does have to be factored in as well. That gap is a little bit bigger now after tonight. How do you feel that will play into how Kansas flows as it's down to those two drivers for the championship entering the final round?
Well, I think Richie Regan Jr. is going to want to go out with another win, so I don't think it's really going to change his approach that much. It actually might take some pressure off, obviously having such a large points gap heading into the final round, and really we've seen it's been very, very rare that he's been outside of the top 10 all season. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Joshua Daniels to really counter that, and I think all that Daniels can do is go out there and try and win the race.
We'll see how things play out at Kansas, but we'd like to thank you for tuning in to tonight's exciting action from Charlotte Motor Speedway. We'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the Precision Racing League for organizing this Strawn Series. As mentioned, registration is currently open for Season 3 of Cup Series competition. For more information, go to precisionracingleague.com. We'd also like to thank the sponsors for this series in Diecast Kings, as well as ButtKicker, as well as the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed up on your screen now. Additional thanks go to Jude Lawn, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a more hold of her great work. Thanks to the team today as well, and Christian and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storenby.com, or check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so you don't miss a moment here on the Global SimRacing Channel. As mentioned, the season finale takes place next Sunday, 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time at Kansas Speedway. Be sure to tune in, that is on May the 31st. Many other series are also having other races listed up on your screen now, so check those out and mark them down your calendar. Those include Season 3 competition, which is to be determined for their respective dates, for iRacing official scheduling over the next couple weeks. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.